Hello everyone. In the last session, we have discussed the structure of a compiler. The next topic on the module 3 is the evaluation of programming languages and the science of building a compiler. I leave these two things as a assignment, and I have already discussed some of the applications of compiler technology. In this session, I am going to just discuss about the programming language basics. See, these you are already familiar with this programming language basics, but let me just focus on the some important concepts. What generally we have studied in the programming languages. See, the question is here: is it necessary to understand what is the semantic of a programming language? Of course, it is very essential that see, whenever you are writing a program, you must understand what are all the programming language constructs. That is, it is very clear that whenever if you want to get your problem is to be resolved, then you need to understand how it can be utilized. Okay, so you mean you have to understand the programming languages, what all the features it has got, what all the functionality it supports. And when you if you understood all these concepts, then immediately you can what you can do is that you can validate your programs, in the sense that you can provide some inputs, and then you can check it out whether it's going to be working as per your requirement or not. Like that you can do. And you must know okay, what are all the that particular language has got some features, how I can make use of that. So you must know yeah, in generally that how you are going to write your programs. So it is very essential to know the program specifications also. And even you can write as according to your problem needs. Okay, suppose in case if you are interested to design some compilers, then you know how the your programming language can help you to uh, solve your problems. Okay. And you must be able to classify the programming languages also. We have got many structure oriented programming languages, object oriented programming languages, like that. So you, based on your requirement, you must be able to uh, classify those programming languages. Okay, I'm going to explain here some of the important basics. Anyway, already you people have learned this, but still let me explain the some important differences or important basics in the programming languages. See, already we have come across the word called as static and dynamic, that is static scope or dynamic scope, or sometimes we call it as a static allocation, dynamic allocation. What exactly it means? See, if a language uses a policy that allows the compiler to decide an issue, please understand here it is generally taken, either it could be related to an scope or it could be related to an allocation, whatever it is. If the compiler is able to decide that particular issue, means what policy is supposed to use at the time of compilation, that time we call it as static policy. It means that the compiler is going to decide at the time of compilation. Such policies are called it as static policies. A policy that only allows a decision to be made when we execute the program. It means that when you are executing your program at the runtime, such policies are called it as dynamic policies. See, for example, just consider if I use a word int a semicolon, means I am going to declare a variable. So now here what happens, the compiler knows, or compiler can allocate a memory for an integer variable. So this is going to be an static policy, because at the time of compilation only the compiler can understand, okay, I need to allocate a memory for storing the integer variable. Such things are called it as an static policy. We just taken another example here. We have written it here, public static int x. See, this is consider a programming language Java. So now here what happens, we know that the generally whenever you declare a variable, it also uh, defines the scope of the variable. Okay, along with the scope of the variable, here the Java also what it does, is that it has the ability of the compiler to determine the location in memory where the declared variable can be found. Please understand, we might have declared a variable in any part of your programming. Either it could be in one block, or else it could be declared it as globally. But please understand that if you define a variable with a static, then it must have, so this particular declaration says that you are going to create a variable x. It means that there is only one copy of x. And see, I am talking related to a Java programming language, this particular exam. If you declare like this, what it says that, suppose if there is a class variable, if x is a class variable, means it's going to create only one copy of that. And how many objects of this class are created, irrespective of that, it is going to create only one variable. So please understand here, the main thing is that the one copy will be created and many of the objects can access this. So that is the meaning. That's what here we should not only your whenever you are creating such variables, this is going to be if I declare here the word static. Okay, so sorry. Now the thing is that uh, in the case of a static, here um, the only one copy is going to be created. If static is not there, just consider that if static is not there, then every object would have created a x many times. If you are calling the n if you are calling the, if there are n objects, then n copies of x would have been created if static is not defined here. Here the static is defined, and hence it is going to create only one copy. So that is the just an example here, how your compiler must be able to understand whether it's a dynamic or static policy. It is a simple example. Generally we understand that a static policy is that it's normally a policy that it happens with an compile time, and dynamic means it is with runtime. Okay, but again there is a there are many things are there associated with the static that we will see later. Now consider another basic concept, that is a environment and states. When we do call it as an environment, and when we call it as a state. See, generally we are not aware of all these things when we write a simple programs or when you study at the beginning level. But if you think in terms of an compiler, then the compiler must understand the difference between environments and states. See, the generally whenever you declare a variable, okay, and you do lot of manipulations with the data, or you do computations with the data. But when you are going to change those values, or when you are going to manipulate that, so that is going to be decided by your environments and states. See here, the suppose if the changes occurring as the program runs, whether it affects the value of data elements or it affects the interpretation of names for the data. Please understand here, whenever you run your program, okay, uh, whether it affects the values of data elements, it means that, for example, I have taken it here, x is equal to y plus 1. Okay, Now whether it's going when it's going to affect the value of data elements, or sometimes what happens, if you have a multiple copies of x you might have declared in many blocks. In that case, your compiler must be able to interpret the proper x. I hope you are clear here. That is, if x is declared in multiple blocks, or for example when you are using a object oriented programming languages, where if x is declared in multiple objects, you have got a multiple objects, that is something called it as a b c d e and l, and in everywhere there is a x is there. So then you must be able to properly interpret for which x you are going to manipulate, you are going to change the occur. So this is going to be decided by your the environment and state. I hope here I am clear with what you mean by the what whether you are going to change the data element, or whether you are going to change the this your interpret with the multiple meanings. Okay, so now just consider the example here. As I told that the execution of an assignment statement, that is x is equal to y plus 1. Here it's very clear that the x value is going to be changed. X value is going to be changed, means whatever the location is there x, in that the value of y is going to be added with 1 and then changes at the location x. Okay, so this is going to happen at runtime. This x value is going to change at runtime. Suppose if here as I told here, in this case int x, here if it is not a static, if it is not a static case, then and if it is an as I told that this is Java example, then every object of the class, if it is not a static, then every object of the class would have been a separate variable. So that is the difference. But how you are going to interpret that, that's what we must know. What is the environment state? See, for example, if please try to understand here, when x is equal to y plus 1, it is less clear that the location denoted by x can change at runtime. See, we can just understand that here in this case it can change at runtime, but if it is like this, that is public int x, that time how can you understand? So that's what here it is not very clear. Hence we need to know what are the environment and state. Okay, here whenever we talk about the environment, then just consider here, let me go back to the here. See, the environment is a mapping from names to location in the store. See, please understand here, you are going to use some variable name, and then that is going to be mapped to a certain locations. We declare a variables, and those variable we use some names, but when it allocates a location, that time it becomes a variable. So this mapping of names to an location is called as environment. The environment is mapping a from names to location in the store. As I have explained, int a, here what we are doing, a is here just a name, it's not yet, it's a some name. Okay, but it is not when it is going to be considered as a variable, when you are going to map into a some locations, so that thing we call it as a variable. And similarly the state is a mapping from location in store to their values. See, here it is when you are going to assign some values. See, for example, if I say a is equal to 1, now what happens, the value of 1 is mapped to a certain variable, that is a, but here we are not storing it in a, we are storing it in a location a, in a location which is indicated by a, that is a state. Okay, So that's what the state is mapping from location in store to their values. Okay. Now just consider here, mm, if I'm using the word related to um, C programming, consider this example. As if here I have we have taken two variables, both are of type integer, and one is the I variable is declared, one is global and another one is local. See, now when you are executing a function f, assume that the global I just outside of this means there is another function called as g. One is there here f and another one is g. Now if I use this, in case if the function f is calling the I, then what happens, then it's going to use the local I. So here the function f has got a local I, and then I is assigned with 3. Correct? Here I is assigned with 3. It means that here in this case it should clearly understand that it has to use the local I. Why it is local I? Because see, it has to map your the state has to map the I value should be with of 3. If assume that there is an another function g is executing this function, some just example, so that time the I cannot refer the local of f function I. When you are using the x is equal to I plus n, so this time I is not going to refer the local variable of function f, it's going to refer to the global variable. So it means that here the scope of the variable is related is global. In this case the scope of the variable is global. Okay, so now forget about what is the value of I, and then that is going to add to the x, but try to understand here, in the function of in the function f, the I scope is local to that, and when you come out of this, then when you are using x I is here, then I has to refer to a global scope. Okay, so that is what how you are going to map. Okay, so now when here always we have to focus on the two things here, whether whenever you are going to binding the names here the name to the locations and then location to the values, how you are going to consider static versus dynamic binding of names to locations. See, most of the binding of name to location is dynamic. Whenever you are means all the environment variables are all the environment things are dynamic. Whenever you are binding the names to locations, so that time it is dynamic. Okay. Um, how we can understand this is that, see, in this example I told that here I is given it as a global. In this case the compiler understood that it is the I must be mapped to a global variable. It means that this can be only possible with a dynamic. So that is in most of the cases binding the names to location is dynamic. Okay, now how to binding the location to the values, whether it is a static versus or dynamic. The binding of location to values is generally dynamic since we cannot tell the value in a location until we run the program. Just consider an example here how your the value is going to be assigned to locations. See, for example, see again, as I told that most of the things are dynamic, but now for example if I consider a macro in the C programming language, something called as hash define max 10. Here now what happens, the value of max I am assigning it as 10. See, this hash define max10 is static. In this case, it's not a dynamic. So we must be very clear here is that when the value is going to be mapped to n locations, so that time most of the cases is dynamic, but in this case, in such a cases, it's going to be a static. Okay. uh, Here please try to understand the difference between the name, location and values, or when we call it as an the identifiers and all. Okay. Name, see, the identifier is a string of characters. See, this is it refers to an entity or a data object or a procedure or a class or a type. What is an identifier? Identifier is a string of characters that refers to an entity or an object or a procedure or a class or a type, like that. Okay. See, all identifiers are name. Please understand here, the name, the word has come now. All identifiers are names. See, assume that if I have some class as X, and in that there is an one member is there, that is Y. Now if I want to refer that member Y of that class X, then we refer it as X dot Y. So what is that? X dot Y. X is a class name and Y is the member name, data member name. So in such a cases, then this we call it as a qualified names. And even in case of an structures also we do that. If the structure name is student, and if the one data member is there of name, then something we call it as, if there is a structure of template, the structure template name you have given it as student, and then you have created a variable as yes, and there is a one variable in that which refers to a name field. Assume that you have taken the variable as name. So that case what happens? Yes dot name. So this is going to be a qualified name. Now what is the variable? See, variable, it refers to a particular location in the memory. It means that you can use see, you will be using a name for that. Now what you do, when you allocate a memory, and for that memory you are going to name, so that is going to become a variable. So please understand these simple differences between the identifier and name. All identifiers are names, but not all names are identifiers. Similarly, all variables are identifiers, but not all identifiers are variables. Okay. So then after that, once we clear with this, then we'll come to the another language basic, that is static scope and block structure. Okay. Okay, now let me explain this diagram so that it will be more clear with you. See, you're all familiar with the C programming languages. Now understand here the how it's going to be a your scope of a variable is defined here. And before that, I think you are clear with the meaning of function, procedure, and methods. Okay. See, generally, when we use a functions or when we use a procedure or method, the one thing you understand that whenever you are talking of a function generally returns a value of some type. It means that function returns a value, whereas procedure does not return a value. Means if you are not using any return value, that time we can call it as a procedure. Okay. When you call it as a function, means it is returning some value. Function returns a value, procedure does not return a value. But when I say method, it means that either I am using a function or procedure. This is a general meaning, what whenever we are writing a program, what we use. Okay. So now come to this example. I just want to explain you the concept of here what is the scope and block structure. You can see in this program, in this C program, we have used many blocks. See, in C language, the blocks are going to be represented by curly braces. Okay, you can see there is a main. After that, we have started a block, and in that we have declared some variables, that is int a is equal to 1, and then this is int b is equal to 1. See, the entire main program has got b1, that is block 1. And after declaring a two variables, again we have got another block where we have declared a one variable called as int b is equal to 2. See, this whole thing is treated as a block 2. Now again see this, after the int b is equal to 2, we have declared another block where one more variable is there, that is a is equal to 3 with a b3. And after that there is another block b4. Now whenever your I'm sorry, this is C++ program. I told that it is initially C program. It's not a C, it's a C++, because we are using here anyway the concept is going to remain same in both C and C++. Just see here, in this case we are using a C out statement, which is an output statement, and you are displaying here A and B. Now what are the values of A and B would print on the screen? See here, when it whenever your your compiler is going to execute this particular statement, it's going to search these variables in its local declarations, whether the a and b both are declared in the local. If it is, then automatically it's going to print those values. But in this case here, it is cout a, only a is declared as a locally. What about a b, whether it refers to the variable of block b2 or b1? See now, please understand the scope here. The variable scope a is here local, means the variable a is restricted to the scope of b3 only. Okay, now what about b, whether the b has to refer to the b2 or b1? See, since this b3 is enclosed in a b2 block, then it has to refer the variable of that particular block. So it means that here it will take the b value as the variable of block 2. So it means that a is printed as 3 and the b is printed as 2. So the value will be printed here, it is 3 2. Now when you come to the b4, again the b is local here. Okay, so the b is local means then it should print it as a value as 4. What about a, whether it has to refer to a b3 or b2 or b1? So now please understand here, b3 and b4, they are not within one another, they are isolated, means they are separate. So the a value of b3 cannot be taken over here. Then is it declared in a, see, b4 is there within b2, right? Whether the b4, the variable a is declared in b2? No, here it is not declared. Where it is declared? It is declared in b1. So hence in the b1 is the value of a, variable a is used? Yes, it is used. So it means that the value will be here, it is a as 1. And what about b value? B value is 4, which is defined in b4. So in this case it prints it as 1 4. This is what block and your scope. See, generally here it is, we have to be very, very careful when we are going to use the your scope. Okay, so now consider the last statement of b2. What is there here? Cout ab. See, a is not defined in the b2, then it has to go back and refer to the value which is there in b1. What is there in the b1? That is a as 1. What about b? B is defined in a b2. Yes, it is defined as 2. Then what value it should print? It should print it as 1 and 2. Then similarly here it is the last statement of your the b1 block, where it has got a and b and both are there in this. Here it should print it as 1 and 1. So it means that, so in this case the you should understand that the compiler must be able to understand the in which block it is defined. If it is local, print those values, or else if it is not local, then go back to the next innermost next block where it is defined. If it is not there also, then again go to the further level. So like that it goes on, and then it evaluates all the values. Okay. So now this is all about the scope of your block. Okay, and then generally these are all uh, very easy to understand when they are defined. You will be asked in the exam that they give a particular a program like this, and then they will ask you to generate an output for a particular um, snapshot of the program. Okay. Now come to the next one, that is here. This is another language, what you say, basics. So what it is, see, when you are using the whenever you are writing a program, what you can do is that you can restrict the members to access. Means you can restrict the access of data. See, generally this is possible when you are writing an object-oriented programs, or else when you are creating an structures. In structures also you can provide some limit for an users to access the data with some limitations. See, generally you can restrict your data to access by its members. Uh, Here, in what all way you can do, what all way you can control your access. That is, generally we have seen that when you are writing an object oriented program, we use a three different type of access controllers. That is public, private, and protected. So you know that public is generally it is accessible to everyone, and whenever you are calling it as a protected. So in this case what happens, when you are using anything as a protected, the members of that class and the inherited objects of that class. Means if you are inheriting the particular class, in that class also it is accessible. It means that protected members, or all the protected names are accessible to the subclass also. And in case of private, what happens, the private definitions are normally means whenever you are using the any members or any method which is a private, it is accessible to only to that class. If it is a method, then if you are calling with some special feature as a friend, so that time also you can use. So public names are accessible to outside the class. So that way you can provide an control to the access of some members and all, that you are all familiar. And then I'm sorry, this is just an in what way you can provide an access control. The important thing you understand here, the dynamic scope. So here, what do you mean by dynamic scope? Means that um, when you how you are making your compiler to understand when to access a particular variable. See, for example, here, just take an example. A use of a name x refer to the declaration of x in the most recently called procedure with such a declaration, that we call it as an dynamic. I have taken just an example here. Now, just consider there is an example. Okay, what is that? There is a macro is defined, has defined a x plus 1. Now our interesting point here is that what the value x should refer. A use of name x refers to the declaration of x in most recently called procedure with such a declaration. Such a declaration here, it means that what it should refer. Take an example here. See, there is an one variable here, int x is equal to 2. Now this is declared globally, correct? Now you have a two functions b and c. When you call them in the main, the b is called first. When you go to the function b, here int x is equal to 1 is there. Now printf percentage d, you are trying to print a, but what is a actually here? A is a macro. What it should substitute, whether it has to substitute x is equal to 1 or x is equal to 2. That's what it has to substitute is that in the statement it is written x in the most recently called procedure. So it means that here the a is going to refer to with a x value is equal to 1, because this is the most recently used here. So now in this case what happens, when you invoke the function b, the x is going to refer it as 1. So you are calling the printf statement, and the a it substitutes the macro here. But see here, when it substitutes the macro, what it is doing, it is substituting is as x plus 1. See, please understand here it's not going to print 1 plus 1, it's going to print only the value 1. Okay, the what you say, when you are going to here, since a is a macro, it only substitutes. What is that substitution? It is going to substitute it as x value, that is x plus 1, it substitute it as 1 and then it prints it as 1. Here it's not going to print 2. Okay, so now the after the execution of I hope you are clear why it prints 1, because it refers to the x and thus it printed as only 1. So now when you after the in the main function, after the b, the c is going to be called. When it calls the c, right, again you are printing the value, you are invoking the value of a here, that is a is a macro. Now this time the macro is going to refer to a global x. What is that global x? It is, the value is here 2. So now in this case it's going to print the value as 2. So here it is, the concept of under the dynamic scope is that this all value, when to print x is equal to 1 and when to print x is equal to 2, this is going to be recognized, or it's going to be finalized only when at the time of runtime, that is at the time of dynamic. Okay, so that is a dynamic scope of a program. Now next come another important feature that already you have come across, that is parameter passing mechanism. So when you are whenever you are working with the functions, you will be passing a many if you want to communicate with between the if you want to communicate with one function with another function, or the communication between the two functions is always possible with the parameters. If you are not passing or receiving the parameters, then the communication is not possible. The communication can happen in one way or two way. It means that you are passing an argument and then receiving, then it happens in two ways. If you are only sending, you are not receiving, then it happens with only one type. But whatever it is, if you want to communicate between the two functions, then you have to pass the parameters. So this parameter passing mechanism can be done in three ways. The first one is call by value. See here, the another point you try to understand here, what are the actual parameters and formal parameters. See, generally when you are calling some function, okay, and then we use the term as callee and called function. If there is a function a is there which is calling a b function, that time whatever the arguments you are passing in a, those are all going to be referred as actual parameters, and the functions and the parameters which you are mentioning in the called function, there is some b, no, as I told, a is calling b, calling and function and the called function, that called function is b. So in that case, the whatever the variables you mentioned, those parameters you mentioned there, those becomes a formal parameters. Okay, So the actual parameters are there in the calling function and paramal parameters are there in the call function. Now here generally when you use the call by value method, this is a mechanism, one method how you can communicate. If you are using call by value, that time you are passing the value of an actual parameter, and whatever the computation happens, that happens with the formal parameters, because the value of the actual parameter is assigned to a formal parameters and the computation takes place. So whatever the changes happens there, it does not reflect in the call in the calling function. That is the call by value. But in the same thing, when you are using, for example, if I consider a C program, and if you are using an array, if you are passing an array values, see in this case generally when you are passing an array, it does not pass the value, it pass the address, it pass the pointers. So in that case what happens, it's going to be whatever the changes you do at the in the called function, then automatically the changes happens here also. So you are passing an address. So that's what the second method is we refer it as call by reference. So in the call by reference, you are going to pass the address of the actual parameter. You are not going to pass the value here, you are going to pass the address. So whatever the changes you make in the uh, call function, so the all changes will reflect in the in the actual parameters also. So that's what, if you want to perform any mm, uh, if you want to do any changes in the actual parameters also through a functions, then it is always preferable to use call by reference. See, I'm not going to give here any examples because already you are familiar with this. Just I want to highlight the features. But our main understanding here is that how the compiler is going to make how it's going to understand. See, in case of an whenever you are passing an array, you are not at all passing the address, but the compiler must understand that okay, this is an array and it must do the, okay, we are passing an address here, not a value. But earlier one more mechanism was there, that is call by name. Now it's not being used, but it was introduced in a programming language called Algol 60. That in that programming they were using. See, generally this call by name, it means that it is something like macro. Whenever uh, when you use this call by name, the Algor 60, what is to do it, it execute as if the actual parameter were substituted literally for the formal parameters in the code of the callee. It means that how the macro were using the similar thing. Okay, so all the formal parameters were a macro standing for the actual parameter. It means that whenever you pass an value that is actual parameter, it's going to substitute as it is, means it's going to replace like a macro. Okay, anyway, this the call by name concept is not used in the uh, present programming languages. It was there earlier. And another the last concept of this programming basic, what we are discussing generally here, it is in this the last one is aliasing. See, this is it means that two formal parameters can refer to the same location. Such variables are said to be aliases of one another. Now consider here, just example is taken. Suppose A is an array belong to procedure P. It means that one variable A is there in the procedure P, and this P calls another procedure Q, the Q with the two parameters x y. See, now please understand here, there is another procedure Q. In that, what you have written, your Q prototype, is x comma y. How do you invoke this function from the p? That is, you are calling with a q of a comma a. See, now from the procedure p you are calling procedure q by passing the two arguments, that is a and a. But in fact, what are these? A is only a, it's an array in q, array in p. Now you are passing it to q, so that time both the a is assigned to both x and y of q. See, in procedure p a is there, and in procedure q this a is going to be mapped with x and y. Now x and y are aliases. Okay, now say suppose if I do a changes in the in the queue, if I do some assignment, something called x of 10 is equal to 2, then what happens? See, please understand, here you are making a changes to the x, but automatically it the changes takes place in y also, because you are both x and y are aliases. Whatever the changes you do in x, immediately it reflects in the y also. So these are the few topics which we have come across, but we are not we do not give much attention to these concepts and all, but it is a compiler responsibility, it has to cover everything. So now in the coming lessons, what we will be doing is that we will be studying how these things are all how the compiler is going to manage or handle all these things. Okay, so what we did here in this, in the last three sessions, we studied the language processors, like what is a compiler, what are its applications, then why do we need to study the um, compiler, and what is the structure of the compiler. And then I explained here the some basics of programming language in this session, and I am leaving you to the programming language evolution and the science of building a compiler as an assignment to you people. Okay, and then in the next class I will be explaining the first phase of an compiler, that is lexical analysis. um, I hope you are clear with these concepts. um, Take care, stay safe.